and I'm going to go ahead and show you something interesting. So this is a Microsoft Surface Laptop Studio. I've unboxed it and I've got it in front of me. This is not a Laptop Studio review. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to customize your terminal. So let's switch over to that machine. So what I'm doing is some remote trickery here. So you'll see me facing this direction because I'm using this Laptop Studio and we're streaming the screen. This is a brand new machine and I've just set it up. I've only put on Visual Studio Code, signed into a couple of websites, and I've got Windows Terminal right here. All right. In our last video, you all were really excited about my prompt. You'll notice here in YouTube, we've got this prompt and I've got a lot of stuff going on here. I showed PowerShell and I showed history and I showed fonts and ligatures and WSL and Linux and all that kind of stuff. So I figured, why don't we try without any editing to go and set that up on a brand new machine. Now I want to point out this is a brand new machine other than Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, which I installed earlier because that's what I do every time I start a new machine. So this might be a sloppy video. You might say, hey Scott, just give me a script and I'll go and run that script and it'll make my prompt look cool. I'm going to do this video explicitly slowly because I want you to learn what could go wrong. If I make a mistake, then you'll be able to fix it if you make a mistake. Yes, I could write a script. Yes, I could write a PowerShell for you and do it all, but that's no fun. We're going to try this a little bit differently. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It's going to be slow. If you don't like that, I don't know, fast forward to the end. You can also take a look at my blog. I'll have details there as well. Okay, so out of the box on Windows 11 here, I've got the Windows Terminal. And now, right now, I immediately want to zoom in on stuff. So I do this in a lot of my videos. I use Zoom In. So I'm going to go and search for Zoom It. I'm going to just download this real quick. This is a great tool that lets me annotate on the screen. So I'm going to go and just grab that, open my zip files in Explorer, and then I'm just going to grab the 64-bit version of Zoom It and drop it onto my desktop, which I'm going to then show desktop icons, double click on Zoom It, and now I can zoom in and draw on the screen, which is cool. Zoom It just sits down in there in the tray. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now I'm going to turn off my icons because they're stressing me out. Cool. So we've installed Zoom It and it's running down in the tray. Go and open up Windows Terminal and I'm going to pull down that first menu and I'm going to notice right here that Windows Terminal has detected that I have Windows PowerShell, the original DOS or command prompt, and then it puts Azure Cloud Shell in by default. I can, if I want to, click on the chevron and pull that down, hit Settings, and then I can, change my default profile to something else, or I can open up a JSON file down here in the corner if I want and see that JSON file, which is the settings behind this. So if I click Open JSON File, it's going to say, hey, what do you want to handle your JSON files? And I'm going to say always use Visual Studio Code, and that'll open up that JSON file. Visual Studio Code may warn me about restricted mode. I'm going to say, yeah, I trust this location, so don't bug me so much. And now I've got my JSON file, and we'll be changing that and putting in some settings that are specific. And you can see that I can go and hide some of these if I want to. So we'll make some settings both here, and we'll make settings in the JSON file as well. I can also point out here that if I want, I could make the Windows Terminal the default shell. A lot of us type Windows R and we pop up the run dialog, and then we type CMD, and that brings up this old shell right here. We may not want that. So what I'm going to do also is I'm going to say Windows Terminal will be my default terminal application, so that when I go and save that and go away and I hit Windows R and I type in CMD and press enter, that's going to bring up CMD inside of the new Windows Terminal rather than the old console host. So that's a cool change to make right off the bat. All right. Now we're using Windows PowerShell, PowerShell Classic, and I'm a fan, but I want to use the new hotness. There's lots of ways to get it. I'll go into the store and grab it, but you can go and download it from GitHub if it makes you happy, and I'll just say PowerShell, and then we'll go and grab PowerShell right here. This really showcases the difference, by the way, between a shell, which gives you that little command prompt, and the prompt itself, which we're going to customize, and then the terminal or that console that does the painting of the strings. So we'll go and grab PowerShell. That's installing PowerShell. Now it's done. Okay, I'm going to close Terminal and reopen it here, and then we'll look at that drop down and we'll note that PowerShell, the new latest .NET Core PowerShell 7 or 8, I think it is, much newer than the Windows PowerShell. But notice that Windows PowerShell is boldface. We're going to make that that's the default because it's bold. We're going to make PowerShell the default. So we'll go into settings, and we will say default profile is now PowerShell, not Windows PowerShell. I'll hit save. And then again, if I want to open up that JSON file, notice that it is in fact detecting these prompts. I'm going to actually hide Windows PowerShell. I'm going to use the cross-platform one instead. I'm going to hit close. Okay, and then we'll come back here and we'll do that drop down and we'll see that PowerShell is now the bold default and Windows PowerShell is there, but it's hidden. I can still run it, but I don't want to think about it again because it's, it's emotionally stressing me out. Now again, if I want, I can hit settings, I can hit open JSON file, and I could even move PowerShell up by just editing this JSON file and make it the first thing in the list. That's cool. I can make a save and actually go back over here and Windows Terminal will pick it up right away. So now it's the first item in the list there. A lot of choices. If you have a Python shell, if you like Fish or DSA, whatever shells make you happy, you can put it in there. It's totally configurable. So that's thing number one. So now when we open up a new tab, we're going to get PowerShell 7.1.4, which is the latest one. Okay. Now right now it does the basic stuff. dir is actually not dir. It's an alias to something else. So if I type in alias dir, I can see that it's really an alias to get child item. An alias ls, which is a Linuxism, is an alias to get child item also. So ls, dir, and get child item are all the same thing. I don't have any coloring. I don't have any fancy fonts. I don't have anything interesting here really going on at all. What we're going to do is start out by first putting on WSL. Okay, the best way to install WSL is WSL -- install. Okay. Now this shows me that I've already got it enabled. And if you type WSL -- install like this, it looks like it came enabled already. That's going to want to set up like the virtual machine and Hyper-V and all the different things that you need. This does work on Windows Home. You don't need Windows Pro to do this. But if I go and type WSL by itself, it says there's nothing here. I don't have any installed distributions. I don't have Linux on this machine. And there's two ways to get it. I could go and say, visit the store, but I think I can also go install Ubuntu. That's actually coming soon. That's a good point. So in the future, you'll be able to go WSL install Ubuntu, and that will update. So let's go to the store and grab Linux. So I'll just go to the Windows Store, and I'm actually typing Linux in the Windows Store, which is kind of a hotness. Let's go ahead and grab Ubuntu. This will be the latest one. I'll hit install. Now, when we're doing this, it's important to note that this is not Microsoft. This is Canonical, the folks that make Ubuntu. It is a Zulu word. It's not pronounced Ubuntu, so please stop doing that. It's Ubuntu. And we're going to go grab that. And you see it's about 500 megs. What is it downloading and where is it downloading it from? This is actually coming down from Canonical, and it's a tar file that Canonical submitted themselves into the store. And if I type in Linux, you can see that there's other choices as well, including Kali or SUSE, SUSE Enterprise, different Linuxes out there that you can pick. You can also pick Ubuntu 18.04, that's April of 2018, or you can pick 20.04 as well. Okay, let's see if that's finished. I'll know when it's done if an icon appears down here. See, it says Ubuntu recently added. Now, when I run that for the first time, it says installing. This may take a few minutes. It's just untarring. It's unzipping that tar file on my system. It's a one-time thing. Won't take very long at all. And then there you go. It says Unix username. I'll go and put in my username and password. This is not the same as my Microsoft one. And then I'm going to close the terminal and run it again because, again, that detection code runs when you start up your system. Pull that chevron down, and now you can see Ubuntu with a little tux has just appeared right there. So now I've got the Windows terminal detecting that. You may notice that it's warning me about PowerShell here. That'll be appear in the store soon. So sometimes you'll get a little warning about PowerShell being released, and if you've installed it from the store like I have, you'll get it in a day or two. So don't stress too much about that. And you can hide that prompt if it makes you happy. Now I'm going to go here and say run Ubuntu. So I just did. It dropped me here in Mount C users Scott. I can control where that is if I want to by going into Visual Studio Code and looking at that settings file again. And we can go here and settings for Ubuntu. Here's Ubuntu now. That profile has a starting directory. And I always forget if it's supposed to be like this or what. So I usually end up Googling for what the best way to have that start in the current directory is. Sometimes, yeah, it's not that. I think that it is, let's go and Google for it because this is live, right? WSL starting directory. Actually, hang on. I think I have this on my gists. So I have gists on my GitHub, where I keep all of my settings, and you should too. And if I recall, I put this up there a while back in my settings.json. And you can go and explore these if you want to as well. And let's see, Ubuntu. Yeah, this is one way to change your starting directory. This is an interesting one. What I'm doing here is I'm saying that my starting directory is the WSL $network share and then Ubuntu 18.04. We can actually prove that by going here in Linux and seeing what it's called. That's actually called Ubuntu, not 18.04. So I'm going to change that to that, and then I'll double click on it. And you'll notice here it says WSL.localhost. That's that network share for my local Ubuntu here. So let's try WSL localhost. Okay, and then we'll come back out into our terminal and we'll open up a Ubuntu and we'll see if that drops us in. Okay, that dropped us into the root. Let's see where our choices are. If I go here to home, that's /home/Scott. WSL localhost /home/Scott is listed right there. Run terminal, run Ubuntu. That feels like it's dropping me into the root folder there and not where I want to be, which is down a little bit lower. As I recall, I think I did this differently on another machine. So let's take a moment and figure that out. This is one of those little quality of life things. It really depends on where you want to start out. Oh, I remember. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, instead of starting directory, I can actually control the command line. So what command line do I want to use here to start up my WSL? And you can pass in the directory name. So I'll just say WSL tilde, and then we'll open up Ubuntu, and there you go. So now I'm dropped into that location. So let's think about what just happened there, because I was moving pretty fast. So the point here is that you have control over everything. Nothing is hidden from you. You have control in your Windows Terminal settings. You have control on the command line, the starting directories. But in that example, I needed to figure out what language this thing spoke so that I could drop into the right folder. And I wanted to drop into that home folder. Other people might want to drop into Mount C users, Scott. And now I'm over on the Windows desktop, but I'm doing it from Linux. Okay. All right, let's go back to our prompts here. This font by default is called Cascadia Code. It's a new font. I think it's under Appearance. Is it Appearance or Color Schemes? Appearance. Cascadia Mono. There's Cascadia Code and Cascadia Mono. Mono for monospaced. But I want to get special glyphs. I want to get special glyphs. So what I'm going to go and do is I'm going to go to nerdfonts.com. I'll go to downloads, and they made a modification of Cascadia Code, and they called it Cascadia Cove, spelled it differently. And inside that, they added a bunch of cool glyphs, Visual Studio icons, GitHub icons, calendars, all kinds of fun stuff. So let's go and grab that, and we'll go and save that on our desktop. I'm going to drop that on the desktop, and now I'm going to hit Windows D to drop out to my desktop really fast. I'm going to right click and say Show Desktop Icons. Now I'm going to right drag. I'm using my right mouse button, and I'm right dragging and hitting Extract. And then I hit Extract, and now I have those in a folder here. Then I'm going to hit Windows R, and I'm going to type C Windows Fonts. Yes, I could also right click on the fonts, and I could say Install. You'll notice that there's some parts of Windows 11 that are not dark mode yet. I'm sure that they're going to work on that. Let's go and install these nerd fonts. These are, again, modifications of that Cascadia Code with the nerd font glyphs that I want. Those are the icons that I want. Now I'm going to not make any changes yet in my settings because I want you to see it broken first, and then I'm going to fix it. Okay, so that'll be cool. Let's do this. All right, so we have the default font going on here. Let's go and look at our new prompt. It's called OhMyPosh. OhMyPosh is actually a prompt engine that started out for PowerShell, but it's actually for any shell. and this is a great way to get started, and this is the one that I use. So if we say get this, we can go into PowerShell and we can learn about ways to potentially go and do this, right? Here it says you could use this for PowerShell, or you could use it for any potential shell. Now, Windows 11 includes a thing called winget, and winget is like apt-get for Windows, so I can actually go and use that and install OhMyPosh at the command line. Just say winget install, and it'll go and get that, and now it's going to bring that down. There's the installer. That's cool. Checking that that's verified. It's going to start the installer real quick. Now it's installed. All right, cool. Now, if I recall, that thing is actually called ohmyposh.exe. So let's go back to our terminal. You can see when I run it, it outputs a default prompt. There's a couple of things that are going on here that are really interesting. First, we're missing glyphs here. You see all these squares? It's outputting Unicode code points, but it's in fact outputting the ones that we don't have a font for. We don't have a glyph in our default font. That's why we made a nerd font. Then we have this no config warning as well. Let's fix the fonts first, and then we'll do the rest. So I'm going to go to settings, and then I'll say PowerShell, and I'll go to appearance. I could change this for everyone, but just for the purposes of showing you this, I'm going to go and pick it directly. I can say nerd font mono, or the NF variant. We'll go ahead and hit that. We'll come back over here, and you'll notice immediately we've got the rounded edge, we've got the cool arrows, we've got the folders, we've got the PowerShell. It's telling me my current prompt. We got the human heart, which is not creepy at all. And that is appearing every time we hit OhMyPosh. But this is the actual prompt here. OhMyPosh is just an executable that outputs the prompt. So what we want to do is teach PowerShell how to use ohmyposh.exe to print out the prompt rather than the default. So we're going to change that prompt. Again, this will work on anything that can output an executable or run an executable every time you push. You can push enter. Now PowerShell has a profile, so I could run notepad $profile. And it'll pop up and it'll say, well, path not specified. You don't have a profile file. What is that? I think we can say echo profile and it'll tell us where it should be. So now I'm going to select this path with my mouse. I'm going to right click. Now I'm going to hit Windows R and paste it in. So I'm going to go directly down there. Look, I don't even have a PowerShell folder under documents. Scandalous. So now what I need to do is make this thing here. There's a couple ways to do it. I could echo something directly to this path. I could touch it. I could make the folder manually. It's totally up to you. Put a word in like this. Can never remember the right way to do this. Yeah, so it's mad right now that the folder doesn't exist. So we'll make a folder here called PowerShell first. And then I should be able to just put a word into it. So make that file in any way that you possibly can. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start dragging it. And then I'm going to Alt-Tab with my other hand, and I'm going to drop that directly into Visual Studio Code. And then Visual Studio Code is also going to recommend that I install the PowerShell plugin for VS Code. That's totally optional. It doesn't have to do with anything. But it's kind of cool that it noticed that I'm just going to start to do some PowerShell. Okay? All right. Now, your PowerShell profile has to have stuff in it. We can go back over to the installation here, and we can say, okay, we've installed it. What do we do? Well, it says replace your current prompt, right? So we want to go and edit our profile here. We're going to add this line. Now what's going to happen here is OhMyPosh, we're going to copy paste this command, is going to edit our file. And what I'm going to do to show this to you is I'm going to put Visual Studio Code off to the right. I'm going to push PowerShell off to the left. Okay, so I'm going to paste this in. It's going to warn me. What we're going to do is we're going to run OhMyPosh. We're going to tell it we're on PowerShell, and we're going to invoke the expression. Okay, and then you'll notice over here that has been updated. Okay, so what's our PowerShell profile look like now? Okay. Now I would have expected that to make a change to my PowerShell profile. It looks like it did not, so let's go and confirm that I know what I'm talking about, because I might not. So here's PowerShell, there's my profile. Did it not update it because it was open by me? That would be weird. Try to do a fun demo and then it doesn't work out, does it? Let's find out, friends. Okay, I'm going to close this because now I don't know if it really happened or not. Okay, so that did not actually update. So that's interesting. I don't know if that's an error or a mistake on my part, but here it's supposed to output this. So let's find out what it was going to do rather than invoke expression. Ah, look at that. So what it wants to do is print out the initial information for our OhMyPosh and then spit it out and join it, and it was going to go and put that into a config file. Oh, I see what it did. Look at this. It put it into a local config. So I bet you that we have a local config now. Oops, look at that. So here's a great example. I made a mistake. I thought that running that would add it to the thing, and I didn't RTFM. So that's my bad, my friends. Look at me being silly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that new profile page and I'm going to copy this in and I'm going to drop that right into our profile, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this line of code, I'm going to copy it into the clipboard, I'm going to come back over to our profile, I'm going to drop it in right there. Okay, so this is now in our profile. That's going to run automatically every time. So now I come back to my PowerShell and I open a new one. Look, now we've got that lovely prompt. Every time I push enter, that prompt updates. But it's not customized, and it's still telling me stuff I don't need, like the name of the computer, my battery life, that there's no config. I want it to look a little bit more interesting. Additionally, I might have a GitHub folder, and let's go and actually grab some GitHub code here. I'm just going to go and grab some code from my own personal GitHub. So go and sign in. Two-factor auth time, kids. Remember I said it was going to be low and slow? I told you that this was not going to be exciting. It was going to be educational, and sometimes those two things are different, aren't they? Two-factor auth live. Okay, GitHub. All right, repositories. Let's go and take my podcast website. Now I'm going to take my code. I like to use the GitHub CLI, but I may not actually have that installed, which means I'll come back over here and I'll say winget install GH, which is the GitHub CLI. There we go. Actually, there's two now, so someone else got in there. GitHub.CLI. Let's go grab that real quick. Go grab the GitHub CLI. I want to point out that I ended up having to say I wanted to get it from Winget because the GitHub CLI is not in the store. Okay, so we now have that. GitHub CLI is great. Let's say GitHub auth login. Hey, how do you want to log in with github.com? Are you already logged in? I am? Oh, cool. How do I do that? That's sweet. All right, let's try pasting in our clone. Cool. Actually, I didn't want to put that there at all. I wanted to put that in my GitHub folder. All right, so I've just cloned my code in there. And you'll notice that the default here that we were given by OhMyPosh has my current folder and my current GitHub. But again, I want to configure this. It doesn't quite look the way that I want. So where is this exactly coming from? Remember, let's go back over to our PowerShell profile. And you can see here it says config Jan de Dobler. Jan de Dobler is the person that manages OhMyPosh. I'm a big fan of his work. So he's given us a default config here. And it says that it's coming out of that tilde path. So I'm wondering if that is sitting around here somewhere or it's deeper down. I may need to go and look for that because I'm not exactly 100% sure where that file is. So I'm just going to go and search for that real quick on my hard drive. So we'll find out together where that's located. This is a pretty fast machine, this Surface Studio laptop here, so I think it won't be too big of a deal. But he's probably buried it somewhere. Okay, so it's down here in C Users, App Data, OhMyPosh Themes. I could have found that by reading the manual probably. Now here's a fun thing. I could be here at the command line and I could go and say start and then type in that path and then hit enter, and it's going to go and automatically launch the Windows Explorer folder here. Inside of the Explorer folder, I just said start in the name of that folder, I've got a whole list of these files. Now, I have modified one of these, as I mentioned before, on my gists. And the one that I have is called OhMyPosh v2 here. I'm going to go and grab that, and I will show it to you. We'll go and stick it in that folder. Okay, so I'm just going to grab that zip file, open it up, and this file here, we're just going to drop into themes. Pick that up, drop it into themes, sort by date modified, pick that up, Alt-Tab, and I'm just going to drop us back over here into Visual Studio Code so we can all look at this together. Each of those little cool graphical things in the theme are segments. And those segments here, like this one represents the path, and this one represents Git, and this one represents .NET. If you do Node or Rust or Go, you might find a segment for that. There's lots of great information on those themes and the segments within them, like what's the current AWS or Azure environment that I'm locked into. You can go and add these things yourself. I've just modified mine. So let's go and put that in here. And it's called OhMyPosh v3 v2. Not my finest hour, friends. I should not have probably named that such a silly name. But I did, so that's what it is. Let's go and grab that, put that into our clipboard, go back over here, and instead of picking the default, I'm going to now switch it to mine. So now when my prompt starts up, we're going to initialize with new settings. We'll come back out here, we'll hit plus. Okay, interesting. It says no config. So what did we do wrong? Let's find out. Pretty sure that that's correct. OhMyPosh v3. Pretty sure that it's in the right folder in themes. Although it does make me wonder if the file exists in two places, so we're going to want to learn about that. I could probably give it a long path if I want to do that. That might be a little aggressive though, because then I'll never really know. Okay, so that updated with mine, but I think that that means that this original file, the one that he gave us, is actually in two places right now. So that's funny. I'm going to drop back out and search for that. Okay, so we know that, see, it's actually in multiple places. So that's interesting. He's got links to it from different places. So that's one of the reasons that I got a little confused. And that's fine. I'm just going to use my full path. I could also put that in my Dropbox or my OneDrive or somewhere where it would always be available. I could put it in there, or actually I could even put it in, like, C GitHub. What I really should do is put all of this fun stuff in my my prompt. I should make one called like prompt, right? And then we'll take this guy out of here. We'll go over to C GitHub. We'll make a new folder here and we'll call it prompt. And then we'll hit Control V and we'll go like that and drop in that guy. Okay, so now I've got it in C prompt. So let's test that. Again, maybe this isn't the video for you if it's going slow. Maybe I'm showing you too much detail, but teach a person to fish, eh? Okay. All right, now let's go to GitHub. Now we're cooking. Check it out. That's the one that I showed you in the video before. Got my path, got my Git stuff, got my current version of .NET, which is version 6, and the heart there. What's that human heart about? That's an interesting one. If I go and type something wrong, it'll actually turn red to show me that the last item, the last command had an error level of 1. That's why that's there. Again, you don't have to use any of this. What's fun about OhMyPosh and customizing things is you can modify these things. Now, look at this. See how those are wrong? Look at those. That's interesting. Look at that. What if I opened up a terminal down here, right? What if I opened up a terminal? Look at this. It's all confused and weird. It says it can't find OhMyPosh because it's not in the path. The fonts are looking weird. Well, I need to change my fonts in multiple places. I sent it before in the settings, right, of my terminal, but I never set it in the settings of the Visual Studio Code as well. I can do that a couple different ways. I can do it in the JSON part of things, or I can do it in the settings UI part, which is right here, settings UI. And then I can type in font, and we can change the font, because right now it's Consolus. We're going to reject Consolus, and we're going to go with the hotness, which is Cascadia Cove. And then I'm going to switch back over here to my prompt. And let's open that again and see if we get that font, because maybe that will work. So that's still not working, so let's find out what's going on. Font family. Is it the right font family? Do I care about these other fonts? I'm going to split this off to the right, and I'm going to make changes. Oh, look at that. So that didn't get that right. Should be in quotes. Notice that I make the changes here on settings, and things update on the side there. So it's not finding Cascadia Cove Nerve font. Otherwise, those fonts on the side would change. What we can do is go to Windows Fonts, and I can take a look at the Cascadia fonts that I put in there. I can double click on them and see if, oh, interesting, they have different names. That says Nerd font, and then it says book. You kind of need to check these things. So making sure that these things are recognized by Visual Studio Code is important. And I'll take a second, and I'm going to move my head out of the way so that you can see me. Not there. Maybe I won't. Maybe I will. There we go. All right, let's go back here and figure this out together, shall we? Cascadia Cove Nerve font complete. Do you need the whole thing? How much information do you need in Visual Studio Code? Do you just need the family? I'm scandalized. What's going on? Cascadia Code is a family. Okay, that got us back here, but you see that these are still wrong. Right there, we're close. Cascadia Cove, you'll notice immediately is wrong. NF, Nerd font. How did I do this before? Let's go to my other Visual Studio on this machine over here and find out. Writing all this stuff down and also learning how to figure these things out is a really important way of doing things. Cascadia, oh yeah, Cascadia. People are probably yelling in the comments right now saying this was really slow and horrible. What are you doing? What are you doing, Hanselman? Oh, Cascadia Cove. I'm going to take a chance and reload this whole thing. When all else fails, turn it off and turn it on again. Look at that. So there was something about that font that was preventing Visual Studio Code from catching it on the first try. So I was actually right, but Visual Studio Code did not agree. Isn't that frustrating sometimes? So put in the name of your font, and then you'll notice now when I'm editing my segments, you can see stuff like the Visual Studio segment. You can see the starts and the ends. There's that human heart we mentioned. And here are the, the folder icons. Those are all those nerd fonts. So already we're in a nice spot here. Let's go back and look at our PowerShell profile though, because all we've got so far is that basic prompt, which still looks pretty good, right? But I've got a couple things I want to add, like I want my directory to look prettier. I want icons in my directory. Now I've written up blog posts on all of this kind of stuff. And there's a thing called terminal icons, which are just lovely. You can go and learn about this on my blog. I'll do a couple of these, and then we'll skip ahead and I'll just copy my entire profile over. So first I'm going to grab terminal icons from the PowerShell gallery. Terminal icons is just a package that was created by very nice gentleman. And I'm going to say, is that a trusted thing? Yes, the PS terminal gallery is safe. And then I can say import module. It says import module. You put that line in your profile. This is kind of a real standard way of doing things with PowerShell. So we'll go and say import module terminal icons. We'll go back and then let's close this. We'll come back and we'll open our prompt again. Go back over to our GitHub code, type dir. Now we've got terminal icons. Again, those glyphs, they wouldn't have worked if I didn't have that nerd font. There you got the Docker and the Git and the prompts, all very cool. So that's already looking quite a bit nicer, which I think is really great. But I don't have that that automatic history that I showed you all before. So let's go and grab my PowerShell profile. I'm just going to click raw. You can go and find, again, these are all in my gist, and I'm going to hit Control-C, Control-A, Control-C, and I'm going to drop them here, and I'm going to take over all of this code here. And we'll go through it a little bit. It's a long profile. Yours will be different, and that's okay. Okay? All right, now this OhMyPosh line, it's going to go right here. I'm going to just change it from my Dropbox to that new location on this new machine that we've just created here. Okay, and then let's just talk about what's going on here. We've got a couple of namespaces. We're using a thing called PS readline, which allows your prompt to behave more like a bash prompt. In the old days, I used things like PS colors and poshgit. Those aren't needed anymore. I have used different themes in the past. Those aren't needed anymore. Sometimes I'll alias commands to different scripts. Like if I type the word desktop, it'll CD directly to my desktop. I don't really need that right now, and you don't need that either. That's the thing about these profiles. You can just comment out the things you don't need. What we do have is some interesting stuff like what are called argument completers. Argument completers are little PowerShell chunks of code that will automatically complete the arguments when you type tab. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. That will make that my prompt, and then we'll go and load that profile again. I'm opening up my prompt and loading the profile like this because I want to see the errors. I could also just say dot profile. Let's see a couple of things here that are going on. So OhMyPosh is not being imported. That's fine. That's because we're doing it differently. I'm going to delete that and close it and open it again. Now it's salty about line 669. Predictive view style is not found. All right. So that one actually was added recently in PowerShell. And if I recall, that was an add-on. That's not helpful. I don't need that. Let's put that in quotes. Sometimes when you search for stuff, they don't find it. That's included in PS readline 2.1, a newer version of PS readline. So I'm going to go and grab the newer one. Let's go and say install module PS readline. That way I get one that's newer than the one that I have installed already. And I'll probably get another prompt about, I do trust this place and I do trust that place. Okay, let's go ahead and hit run again. Still salty. Let's go and force it for 2.1. Maybe that's the issue. Okay, here we go. So it's saying that it's already there. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Oh, by default, it is disabled. Interessante. Maybe that was the issue. Let's go back and look. Do I actually turn that on? On 668, I do turn that on, and they're salty about prediction view style not working. Let's try that. Parameter cannot be found that matches parameter prediction view style. So they're upset with me because that's not working. That's fine. Let's figure that out together. Again, I could make all of this a script and fix this up, but I like learning about stuff and I like sharing this stuff with you as well. It's always nice to see known bugs. This one says that they got rid of all the old versions of PS readline. They're mad about predictive view style. These folders are not, these are all old things. I want to find ones that are new, so I must include that. Must include prediction view style. Prediction view style. Now it says that that's optional. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off as I learn about it, just to see if I can pass beyond this, and then I'll come back and I'll fix that. Okay, so that's cool. I just got predictions here. So you'll notice that what's happening is, as I start typing, I'm getting in gray a prediction of what I might want to type, and then I can hit tab and get some ideas. I could hit right arrow, so I just said CD, C colon, right arrow. I got that predicted. And the issue here is that I want this list view, the list view one instead. And for some reason, that's not working on this machine, because when I set that, it says the parameter cannot be found. So that makes me wonder if PS readline changed the name of that, or I'm just being silly. I'm not getting anything on that. I can never remember how to do these things. Here we go. Prediction source. So I'm not seeing that. Let's go back and search for that. Use list view. Here's somebody saying that would be nice. Ah, 2.2 beta, including the new prediction list view. So 2.2 beta 1. There you go. So that's the issue. So let's go back over here. And I need to write that in my notes and not say 2.1. I'm going to say 2.2. And take a look at that. Okay, to required version, it's probably like 2.2.0 point something, something, something. I probably need to go and give it more information. Ah, allow pre-release. There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and drop that in. Okay, that's getting a 2.2 beta. Cool. I'm going to add that to my notes so I won't make that mistake again. Now I'm going to put that back on. So now that list view prediction style is back. I did not remember that that was a thing. Let's go ahead and close that and open this. Ah, now I've got nice predictions as a list, which is pretty cool. And then the last thing that I want to install is a thing that's called Z. And Z, I wrote about on my blog, is a replacement for CDing. CD is change directory, and I really love Z. So I'm going to go and install Z at the command line. Install module Z. Clobber says it's okay to clobber existing stuff called Z, but there isn't really anything existing. All right, I'm going to go and grab that little tiny package. Let me see if I imported it before. Does Z work? Let's see, Z, GitHub, cancel minutes. Z, now you see how Z shows up here? Z is really smart and makes it a little bit easier to get around. So I could say Z, users, Scott, desktop, and now I could go Z, Hanselman, see, watch that, I'll do that again, Z, space, HAN, tab, gets me there faster. So it learns that you've been there before and allows you to get those commands quicker. Everything's clean there. So I'm able to go and build my app. Here we are running my podcasting website to go and prove that I can go and build it. So I've set up GitHub, I've set up .NET, I've set up the prompts, I've set up the cool OhMyPosh, I've set up the coloring of the desktop. Now let's see if this actually works. We'll go and build this. That worked fine. When you are using Visual Studio for a long time like I do, you tend to push Control-Shift-B. Control-Shift-B is build. So I made it so my prompt, I can press Control-Shift-B. I'm going to do it right now. Control-Shift-B. It actually puts .NET Build on the command line. Those are the kind of things that you'll find if you go and explore that. So for example, right here, that's a key handler. When I press Control-Shift-B, I insert .NET Build. So there's a hotkey that makes you happy for building the current directory, testing the current directory, or whatever. You could go and insert those kind of things. There's a lot of stuff in here that's pretty cool. That's been taken from some samples that I found online. A lot of things that PS Readline does, like Control R, which if you're a bash person, you can be familiar with. So I just start typing and then it finds that one. I'll do that again, Control R. I know I typed something with status, enter, or I can start typing like this and you'll see that I've got suddenly my nice predictor list as well. Okay, so let's review. What did we do? We have WSL, we have installed a Linux, we set up PowerShell core, PowerShell 7, we changed our prompt, we installed OhMyPosh with winget, we installed GitHub, the command line, the GitHub CLI with winget, we changed our fonts, we got the Cascadia Cove, the Cascadia nerd font. That's the Cascadia nerd font alternative. We made our own OhMyPosh config file. All right, cool. So here's an exercise to you, the reader, my friends. Go over here to Ubuntu, which uses bash, okay, and modify this, go back over to the OhMyPosh instructions and go and install that on Linux, you see? You can use that same prompt. You can go and use that same prompt. So you'll go in sudo get that, you'll bring it down, you'll take a Posh themes, then you can copy over that exact same JSON file that I used before and modify it and get your terminal looking nice, depending on whether you're using ZSH, Bash, Fish, or New, or whatever makes you happy. And then all you have to do is, again, take that same kind of code that I put in my profile, except now it would be in your bash RC or be in your .profile. That is why in my last video, I was able to have that good looking stuff running everywhere, which is really, really cool. Another thing to remind you about is the colorization. Right now, I'm just using the default, but I can go into settings and I can pick PowerShell and I could pick different appearances. Here I could say Campbell PowerShell, which would change the background to blue, which you might like more. And then I can also hit Control-Shift-Scroll. See how I'm making that clear? Okay. And then a couple people also asked about making the actual title bar itself acrylic or transparent. And I've actually got that one as well. That is, if I remember, use acrylic in tab row. You can spend lots of time exploring your JSON files and stuff. So I'm going to go and say at the bottom of my settings.json file, we'll go and we'll put in use acrylic in tab row, and I can make a couple of changes down there. So we'll say comma use acrylic, and I'm not sure if that's a maybe we might end up finding that that's a insiders feature that's coming soon. I could be wrong. True. And then I could say, do I want the theme to be dark or light or system or whatever? I like it to be, you know, whatever the system is. So that would be dark or light. Oops, I forgot about that. And another one would be show tabs in title bar. Set that to be true as well. All right, let's close this down. Bring it up again. So it looks like that transparency, that use acrylic in tab row, is a preview issue. We can go and learn about that if we want to by searching for use acrylic in tab row and discovering that it is going to be here. Oh, there we go, in preview. Okay. And you see where it says preview, I can click on that if I want, and I can go and download the Windows Terminal preview. And I can have those things actually side by side, which is pretty cool. So that would be basically 1 or 2 builds ahead. So that's probably how I did that before. Another thing that you can do with Windows Terminal that's really, really cool is you can hit Alt-Enter and go full screen. And then again, I can modify that. So now I'm full screen on a Windows machine doing my thing. And then I can also open up other stuff. I'm going to hold down Alt and I'm going to press Ubuntu. So now I've got PowerShell on the left here looking at some code with a cool prompt and nice history. And over here I've got, HTOP or whatever in Ubuntu. So that is a excessively detailed and a little bit obnoxious because there were a couple of times I made mistakes way for you to set up your own prompt. Sorry if it was boring, but also if you hung out as long as I hoped you did, that was maybe fun. Yeah, that was cool. Thanks for hanging out.